All right.
Cool. So, according to a recent study cited in Cosmopolitan in the US, only 28% of men and 26% of women are very satisfied with their appearance. Could you talk about what some of the causes might be as well as the consequences?
Ooh, that's a good question. To quote Theodore Roosevelt, comparison is a thief of joy. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have in this day and age when it comes to how we look, I think once upon a time we only felt bad. Men only felt bad about themselves, or women only felt bad about themselves when the latest issue of Cosmo came out. Whereas now we have the opportunity to feel bad like 1,000 times a day every time we open social media. We're looking at Instagram, looking at Facebook. Gone are the days where we have to wait until we're reading a men's health magazine. It's in front of us constantly, and so I think the greatest thief of joy right now is that constant barrage of images that in most cases are either photoshopped, unrealistic, or just not real. And when I say not real, I mean in the context of what is achievable for most people, because everyone's got a different body type, and some people have a very thick set body type. Like I have a very thick set body type, so I'm never going to look like a Calvin Klein model, no matter how lean I get, no matter how hard I work on my abs. But if my image is, well, I'm never going to be happy until I look like a Calvin Klein model, I'm going to spend most of my life completely depressed and miserable, no matter how hard I train, no matter how hard I diet, and it'll probably end up causing other issues, body dysmorphic issues that will probably make me even more unhealthier than what I would be otherwise. Yeah.
Cool. Why do you think people stay in mediocre relationships? What advice would you give to our readers regarding this?
I think people stay in mediocre relationships because it's easy. People don't like doing things that are hard. People don't like doing things that are painful. People don't like hurting others, or nor do they like being uncomfortable themselves. But the challenge that most people don't realise is, in order to, if you're in a, because there's that old saying, if you're not with the one you love, love the one you're with. But when you love the one you're with and you're not with the one, the challenge is there's no void. And when we're in a relationship with someone, the void of intimacy is filled, regardless of the quality of that relationship. And as long as that void is filled, there's no vacuum. And it's not until a void is created through the form of a relationship breakdown, a relationship ending, through the identification of, a misalignment of values, or, not my soulmate, or there's not the connection I thought, that there's now this empty space. And when there's that empty space there, that in itself creates this vacuum that creates opportunity for other people to be drawn in. But if you're in a relationship and you're not in a happy relationship, that opportunity is less likely by probably about 1,000 times to present itself, because that void isn't there. And it's not just the laws of physics, it's also the laws of social interaction. Because when someone sees you and they might be attracted to you, but they see you with a partner, they're not going to necessarily approach you and ask you on a date because, he's already got a boyfriend, he's already got a girlfriend. And so as a result, you may have met the very one that you're supposed to be with, but because you were in a bad relationship, that person didn't approach you or didn't respond to you in kind because they thought you were already taken. So for me, life's too short to live in a bad marriage, a bad relationship, a bad partnership, any relationship where there's disharmony. And being Libran, I'm a little bit more sensitive to harmony than most people. Life's just too short.
So many don't really know how to be alone or are afraid of it. How important is it for us to have and practice that capacity to truly be with ourselves and be alone, literally and metaphorically?
I think being alone is one of the most important practices that everyone should indulge in. And the reason I think most people don't like being alone is because that's when all distractions are gone, we're by ourselves, and that's when our stuff comes up. And we start having our negative thoughts come up and our negative patterns come up, and we start to think about the things that make us feel uncomfortable. It's a lot easier to distract ourselves when someone else is there and we're talking about the weather, or we're talking about boys or girls, or what's just happened on Instagram. I think for most people, give me the question again.
How important is it for us to have and practice the capacity to truly be alone?
I think the challenge for most people is the reason they don't like themselves, the reason that they have such low levels of self-worth, or that a lot of people do, not everyone does, is because no one's ever really truly got to know themselves well enough to really see who they are. It's much like in life. My mum used to say to me when I was a kid, the first school that I went to was basically a hybrid school, where it was a hybrid school with disabled kids with normal kids going to the same classes. I'm not sure which class I was in, by the way. And my mum used to say to me when I used to come home a little bit confused, she'd say, Kerwin, you can learn something from everyone. You can learn something from everyone. But I think the challenge is we spend so much time learning from everyone else that we never really get the opportunity to learn from ourselves. And I can tell you from my own experience being alone has been one of the most difficult, most uncomfortable, most painful things that I have ever done for extended periods of time. But in turn, it has been one of the most rewarding, one of the most enlightening, and one of the most incredible experiences, because I've really got to know who I am. And when you get to know who you are, you start to be able to navigate the world a lot easier, because when you know who you are, you know where your buttons are, you know what your triggers are, you know what your likes are, you know what your dislikes are. Okay, because some people, they go, oh, I don't like that. Why? I don't know. So, well, fucking, how about you get to know yourself so you do know why? Because that might actually be more revealing than the fact that you don't like something at a surface level in itself. And so for me, being alone, much like meditation, most people avoid it because it's uncomfortable. Whereas the true beauty in being alone is learning how to connect with yourself. Because if you can be alone and you can be happy with your own company, then you are perfectly primed to be put into an intimate proximity or any type of relationship whereby you're not going to be looking at the relationship from a perspective of need or control. Because most people need a relationship, okay, because they don't want to be alone. It's called codependence. Codependence is a form of addiction, okay? It's on the spectrum. And when you are codependent on someone and they're codependent on you, you're requiring an external factor, an external individual, an external material object to be there in order for you to feel safe, in order for you to feel whole. But when you can feel safe and whole on your own without anyone else being in your environment, then you're going to be more likely to attract someone else who's going to be feeling safe and whole on their own. And then you're going to have what's called an interdependent relationship, where you're both independent, but you can be independent, but you can be interdependently, where you can both depend on each other, but not in a codependent way. And then you have what I would probably define as probably one of the most healthiest frameworks for a relationship that you can have.
What are 5 strategies you implement to maintain your connection with and love for yourself that our readers might learn from?
Oh, absolutely. Number 1, I spend time alone on a regular basis. Number 2, I meditate every single day. Some days I'll meditate for 2 or 3 hours. If I wake up at 3:30 in the morning, I come back to sleep, I'll meditate until my son wakes up, and whether that's 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning, I'll just meditate. That's been incredibly important. I do a lot of self-work, and by self-work, I do a lot of exploration. I've done a lot of therapeutic work. I've done a lot of work that has put me into situations where I'm stretched. I think that's another one. Put yourself into situations where you're experiencing high levels of stress and pressure. Because I think one of the things that people do is they avoid stressful and pressure situations because they don't like how they act. Whereas when you're in a stressful and a high pressure situation, all you're doing is revealing aspects about yourself that you need to work on. Much like a relationship, when you're in a close, intimate proximity with someone, it's going to bring up the stuff. But most people go, oh, fuck, being with this person, it brings out the worst of me. No, it says being in a relationship brings out your stuff. But what that relationship serves is a cathartic instrument to bring the stuff to the surface. So you can go, holy shit, I didn't realize that was there because when I was by myself, it wasn't present. Now it's there, I can actually work on it. And so I think by people putting themselves in high pressure, high stress situations intermittently, they start to get to know who they are, but they also start to build a level of resilience that enables them to do more of that kind of work in a healthy way. And then that in itself builds self-worth. So what was that? How many is that? 3. So spend time alone, meditate, put yourself in stressful situations. The 4th thing is, take care of your body. And by taking care of your body, stop. This is a quote from one of my clients, Jack something. He said to me once, he said, Kerwin, stop trying to punish the body you hate and start creating the body that you love. And I was like, fuck. That was like Zen. That was like fucking Buddha. And I was like, wow, that's so true. And I think one of the reasons a lot of people don't like training is because they use it as a form of self-abuse. They use it as a form of self-harm rather than using it as an opportunity to connect with themselves and find out more about themselves. Find out what your limitations are. Find out what you're good at. Find out what you're not. But you learn. Because if we can be absent of judgment in situations of exercise where we can look in the mirror and not judge ourselves, we can just accept ourselves for who we are. We can get on the exercise bike and whether we're flogged in 30 seconds or 3 minutes or 9 minutes, we can look at that and go, wow, that's where I'm at. Okay, that's cool. Not, oh my God, comparison. I should be here, I should be there. It gives us the opportunity to really connect and understand, what our physical limitations are.
What are your favourite books, podcasts, or resources for self-psychology, intimacy, or relationships? What do you love about each one, and how does it resonate?
Oh, fuck, where do I start? Okay, podcast, not great with the podcasts. Oh, Joe Rogan. Love Joe Rogan. Diversity. The diversity of the content, the diversity of his guests, the apparent vulnerability, and there's just no limitations of where he'll go. Like, he just goes everywhere. He talks about everything from life, love, sex, drugs. You know, he smoked a fucking joint on live on web TV with Elon Musk. So Joe Rogan to me is the epitome of, they often say a jack of all trades, master of none. And I look at Joe Rogan as a jack of all trades, a master of many. You know, he's a fucking incredible comedian. He's an incredible interviewer. You know, he's an incredible, fight advocate and UFC fanatic. He's an incredible commentator. And just from what I've seen, like when I follow him on Instagram, he looks like a pretty incredible human being. Like, I really want to get on Joe Rogan because I really want to build a relationship. I'd love to be friends with that dude. Incredible guy. So that's the only podcast I really listen to. Books, fuck. Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership. I just love the aspects of understanding, leadership in a high pressure environment with high performers, and understanding the importance of what leadership looks like in a functional way, not in a managerial way. And I just love the discipline. I love the discipline. I love the structure, and I love the place that he comes from, which is very much no bullshit. Another book that I really enjoy, Stealing Fire. I can't remember the author's name, but it's basically basically the last 20, 30 years of the latest, most cutting edge research into flow states and high performance. And it looks at three distinct areas. It looks at technology and how we're now using technology in a range of different ways to increase the potential to enter flow states where we can effortlessly complete certain tasks. They also look at mysticism, where they look at certain aspects of mysticism, everything from chanting, rituals, meditation, and things of a miraculous nature, whereby when used consistently, increase the probability of people entering flow states and being able to achieve high levels of performance, what appears effortlessly. And the last one is then looking at psychedelics and how they're using psychedelics as a way to alleviate consciousness in a way to access the subconscious to enter flow states in what would be appear to be in many cases effortless ways, without having to meditate for 10 years or use technology. It's really now. It's only really now that the research that's been done, going back 60, 70 years ago, that's been, there's been 3 waves of research done at the biggest universities on the planet. I'm talking Harvard, I'm talking Stanford, I'm talking some of the biggest universities in the world, where they've actually been using psychedelics very successfully for the treatment of a whole range of mental issues, mental disorders and labels that we give. And to me, I just find that absolutely phenomenal. I'm finding it phenomenal that they're using MDMA therapy with a very high rate of success for treating PTSD and depression. I'm just finding it really interesting that we have access to incredibly powerful therapeutic compounds that have been demonized by governments and by institutions in order to create levels of control that I think are more unhealthy than the drugs themselves.
Can you please give us your favorite life lesson quote that you use to guide yourself by? Can you share with us how that was relevant to you in your life and how our readers might learn to live by it?
Oh, the one that just pops to mind is "This too shall pass." Look, we all have good shit that goes on. We all have bad shit that goes on. Some of us get dealt more of one than the other, and it is what it is. But I think it's important to remind myself, and for us to constantly remind each other that regardless of how good the situation is, it's going to pass. So enjoy it while it lasts. And no matter how bad the situation is, relax, because this too is also going to pass. And then there'll be some good stuff, and then that's going to pass, and then there'll be some bad stuff. And for me, it's just, "This too shall pass," to me is just a phrase that represents faith. It represents this undying, this knowing, this faith that everything's going to be okay. It's just temporary. Whether you're in the gym and you're fucking repping out on rep 12 of a max set and you're in pain, you want to cry and you want to vomit, or whether you're in the midst of an incredibly painful breakup with the person who you thought were the one, or your business is going down the toilet and you've got people foreclosing. You will look back on that experience as being one of the most rewarding experiences of your life if you have the right perspective and if you have faith that what you're being given in that moment is exactly what you've asked for to get you where you want to go ultimately. But, for most of us, We're not conscious of the fact that our higher power has a much, much, much bigger scope than what we do. And our higher power, our higher self, can see decades into the future. And most of the time we're lucky if we can look 4 hours into the future. And in those painful moments, we've got to just believe and we've got to have faith that this too shall pass, yes, but this is here for a reason. And it's only going to serve what my higher purpose is.
Beautiful. You are a person of great influence. If you could inspire a movement that would bring the most amount of good to the most amount of people, what will it be?
A movement of, helping one another. We're a collaborative species by nature. Like human beings, like mammals, then one of their number one intrinsic drives is collaboration. That's why we operate so well in troops or herds. And I honestly believe if we got back to more of our primal instincts, not around accumulation and consumption, but around collaboration and support, some of the issues that we're dealing with at a global level would be so much easier to deal with, because we wouldn't be focusing on profit, we wouldn't be focusing on consumption, we'd be focusing on, how can we help each other? How can we find a mutually beneficial scenario where everybody wins, where I win, you win, and the planet wins? I win, you win, the planet and the ecosystem win, the sea wins, the forest wins, the universe wins. And for me, if there's a movement that I'd like to create, it's a movement of collaboration, number one. But the second movement that would be an adjunct to that would be the movement of legacy, where people stop focusing on what they're just here to get right now and thinking about what am I actually going to leave behind. So if we can collaborate universally at a higher level to support everyone and everything and every being to get what it is they need, and do that in a way where it's being handed down to the next generation, we've got a pretty good chance of survival.
Okay, last one. This one's a little bit long, so bear with me. When we talk about self-love and understanding, we don't necessarily mean blindly loving and accepting ourselves the way we are. Many times, self-understanding requires us to reflect and ask ourselves the tough questions, to realize perhaps where we need to make changes in ourselves, to be better not only for ourselves, but in our relationships. What are some of the tough questions that will cut through the safe space of comfort we like to maintain that our readers might want to ask themselves? Can you share an example of the time you had to reflect and realize how you needed to make changes?
It is a long one.
Yeah.
I think the crux of it is, what are the tough questions that you ask yourself to create change?
Yeah.
I'll start by saying tension is the chemistry of change. And whenever there is high levels of comfort, there is low probability of change. And in order for change to take place, especially significant change, there has to be significant levels of tension. Tension physiologically is stress or discomfort or pain. And the way that we induce that is by, in some cases, focusing on what it is that is causing us that pain. And I think the challenge for most of us is we lie to ourselves and we use lies like painkillers to numb the tension and numb the pain of the reality of our situation. So for me, my question is always, what's the truth? And you can say, well, there's three truths. There's your truth, there's my truth, and then there's the fucking universal truth. But it's like, for me, no, what's the absolute truth? What is the unbridled, and this happened when I broke up with my wife. So I actually had to sit down and look at myself and go, right, where did I fuck this up? Because I didn't look at it from where did she fuck it up. I had to, because if I'm looking at where she fucked it up, I would have been looking at something that was beyond my control. And I realized for me that in order for me to prepare myself for whatever my next relationship was going to be, I was like, I got to do some work. So I had to really look at what was the truth. What was the truth around, okay, yeah, I wasn't a bad husband, but what did I do badly? Okay, yeah, I wasn't abusive, but when I was abusive, what did that look like and how did it show up? Because the reality is, we're all bad people, we're all abusive, but we're also all kind and we're all gentle. It's just how those traits show up and how they get expressed. And so for me, I'm always looking at what is the truth. And the truth is often the result. Because you can't say, well, the truth is I've eaten really well and I've trained really hard and I just haven't lost any weight. That's not the truth, because the result would back that up. And the truth is the result. And if the result isn't what you want, you've got to ask yourself, so what is the truth? And hone in. I often say this sometimes in seminars where most business owners need to pull their pants down on a cold day, look in the mirror and see the truth. And most people won't do that because they're ashamed or they're embarrassed of what they see, and that creates discomfort. But that's the fucking magic. It's not until we feel the shame or we feel the guilt or we feel that high level of discomfort that we actually increase the probability of creating change. Now, if you do that pathologically, that's not healthy. that leads to depression. It's knowing how to do it intermittently at the right time so that it doesn't become a level of pathology that drives you into the ground, that actually lifts you up. Does this make sense? And I want to make sure there's a clear distinction here, because if you're focusing on all the bad shit in your life right now in order to create a high level of tension, but that becomes pathological, meaning you can't get out of that loop, you will become depressed, you will become anxious, you will become probably, you consider things that you've never considered before. But it's understanding how to use the pain. It's understanding how to use the suffering in a healthy way. So by asking the questions is not what's the truth, but what's the benefit? What's the benefit of me being a shithead husband? What was the benefit of me being disrespectful? What was the benefit of me, showing up and having abusive tendencies in certain ways? And that's where it's like, well, okay, fucking hell, I've already looked at the bad side of this. I can see where the tension is, but what did this actually give me? And then we talk about love. You talk about love in the early study, how we can truly love ourselves. How we love ourselves is the same way that we love someone else, is not in isolation of negative or positive. You can't love someone when you're just focusing on all of their good points, and when their bad points show up, you just ignore them.